Hello, my name is Deja Butler, and this is my final presentation on the Watts Riots in 1965 and how economic and political negligence set Los Angeles ablaze. So pretty much I'm going to start with the Great Migration. It was two migrations, the first and second one. Both of the migrations lasted from 1910 to the 1970s, and people were pretty much fleeing because they wanted better economic opportunities and because of racial tension and racial terror in southern states. Um, Pretty much the African Americans fled to states like Michigan, New York, California, Philadelphia, and Chicago. So this is basically a map of where they fled to. You guys can see the arrows, and the blue shaded area is from where they fled, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, things of that nature. And this is pretty much the factors as to why the riot begun in the first place. It was believed to be because of police harassment, spatial segregation, and population influx. Being as though a lot of African Americans fled, there was a huge sudden population increase in LA, Los Angeles specifically. So that played a huge part in it. And their spatial segregation was basically when realtors um, wouldn't give African Americans housing opportunities in certain areas, such as Beverly Hills, Calabasas, you know, majority white communities. They would not, they rejected their request for housing. And there was a very common issue with police harassment and brutality in this time period as well, and still in the present as well, such as beatings and unlawful seizures and things of that nature. The main component factor was economic deprivation. People had no job opportunities because they couldn't go outside of their area to receive job opportunities. There was a really bad educational system, which meant that people didn't have the appropriate education to receive a decent paying job. It was just a lot of aspects with within economic deprivation that was going on in that time frame. The day the riot begun, 21-year-old Marquette Fry. He was 21, and there was a passenger with them. They got pulled over by an officer, and eventually it turned into a physical altercation with Fry being beaten by several police officers. Um, Miss Price, his mother, got involved by jumping on a police officer's back, and eventually they were arrested. Mr. Fry was accused of driving while under the influence, and the argument pretty much occurred because he wanted to drop his vehicle off at his mother's house, which was little under a block away. So pretty much everyone saw this, witnessed this incident, and were pretty much fed up with what was going on in their community as far as police harassment and the fact that there were no opportunities for economic growth. So that's when the riot pretty much begun after this incident. The riot pretty much consisted of looting, violence, arson, frustration, and things of that nature in the Watts neighborhood. Um, the police power was limited in the beginning, so officers pretty much evacuated the area until further notice. There were pretty much 31 and 35,000 adults that participated in this 6-day riot. This is pretty much a some coverage on the riot, news coverage that was broadcasted around, around the time of the riot. I'm gonna just we're just gonna watch like a couple minutes or so. Yeah, so as you can see, the video is a half hour. It's on YouTube if you guys want to see the whole thing, but I just wanted you guys to see like a glimpse of it. So the riot concluded on August 15th. There was $40,000 worth of damage, which was caused by arson and the looting. Police power was the main reason why the riot concluded. Chief Parker, who was head of the LAPD at the time, he created things such as an 8 p.m. curfew, which ensued a mass arrest in the Watts area. And he was sending hundreds of officers into the area until he finally called the National Guard. So pretty much there were 34 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, and 34 over 3,400 arrests that occurred due to the riot. So there were a lot of political failures in this situation. Pretty much the excessive police power. Chief Parker was a very biased person, in which people finally found that out a little bit later after riots. Um, he pretty much controlled the whole blueprint of how the riot was going to be resolved and things of that nature, which was pretty in a negative manner. He treated it as a threat. He literally said, and I quote, "These people are like monkeys in the jungle," pretty much. So, based on that statement, he had a pretty good, a pretty negative bias towards the black community, and he also had a really biased opinion about the riot in general. He really didn't think it was a rebellion. He just thought it was a tantrum, a riot. And there was also political neglect. The superiors within the state, they did nothing. They more so wanted to avoid the situation and throw it under the rug rather than help prevent the issues before it even ensued. Such as, making the educational system better, making, employment programs and opportunities, just better aspects that could have prevented this whole conflict. So there was a lot of questions about why this happened. People pretty much, based on the looting and the stealing and things of that nature, um, people just thought, it was just a big tantrum. Like it was nothing that there was no underlying base to it, because of all the violence and people stealing and it just overshadowed the whole reason why the riot occurred in the first place. Um, Even non-participants that were African Americans and did not participate in the riot had the same ideas and opinions about why the riot begun. It was basically because of the factors that I have discussed earlier in this presentation. The harassment, which was a big thing. No jobs. Isolation. It was pretty much isolation and neglect within these communities. And to end my presentation, I ended off with a quote by Scott Martell. He was a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. It says, "A riot can symbolize many different and sometimes contradictory things, depending on the prism through which one regards it." Which I believe it means like everybody has so many different ideas about this riot, but the underlying issues were never discussed, were never talked about, which is, and then the violence that occurred and the stealing that occurred, the whole underlying issue was just avoided and not even seen fully. So I just think that this quote means everybody has their different ideas, whether they're positive or negative. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And these are my references. And I pretty much enjoyed this course. It was pretty enlightening and knowledgeable, and I hope everything um, was well understandable. So, everyone have a good day, and I'm looking forward to seeing your presentations. All right.